By the summer of 2024, Bryson DeChambeau no longer looked like the man golf had once struggled to understand. At Pinehurst, he smiled between shots. He spoke to spectators. He signed autographs while moving through the chaos. And when the U.S. Open came down to one final mistake, one bunker and one impossible recovery, he produced the shot that saved everything. 54 yards from sand, 4 feet from the hole, one final putt. His second U.S. Open title. The crowd did not simply applaud him. They embraced him. The scientist had become a showman. The outsider had become a champion people wanted to follow. A player once treated as arrogant, obsessive, and strangely mechanical now appeared human, even joyful. But hidden beneath that redemption was an older number, 322.1 yards. That was Bryson DeChambeau's average driving distance during the 2019-20 PGA Tour season, roughly 26 yards longer than the tour average, 40 pounds heavier than the player the public remembered, and operating at a speed the game's existing structures were never designed to absorb quietly. Most people saw a transformation. Inside golf, some saw a warning, because Bryson had not broken the rules. He had studied them. He had measured the limits of the equipment, the human body, and the modern golf course. Then he moved toward those limits with the discipline of an engineer. The uncomfortable question was never whether his experiment worked. It did. The question was what would happen when everyone else understood the same calculation. Years before Bryson became the most visible symbol of golf's distance race, Tiger Woods had already described the problem. In 2017, Woods said something needed to be done about the golf ball. Technology was pushing courses toward 8,000 yards. Land was limited. The old architecture was slowly losing its defenses. At the time, it sounded like a familiar complaint from a former champion watching the game evolve. Then Bryson came back from the pandemic shutdown looking like a different species of golfer. Suddenly, Tiger's warning had a body, and a ball speed, and a name. The story had begun long before the weight gain. Bryson DeChambeau was never built to accept golf as a collection of traditions. As a teenager, he studied Time's The Golfing Machine, a technical book that attempted to describe the swing through geometry and physics. He developed a single plane motion. He made his irons the same length. He used oversized grips and unusually upright lie angles. Where other players relied on feel, Bryson searched for variables. Where others described a shot as comfortable, he wanted to know the air density, the launch angle, the spin rate, and the effect of elevation. That identity made him marketable. The scientist was different. Different sold equipment, different created headlines, different gave broadcasters a character they could explain in one sentence. But being different was not enough. By late 2019, Bryson had identified a more valuable variable: speed. Modern performance data had already weakened one of golf's oldest sayings: drive for show, putt for dough. Strokes gained analysis suggested that distance had real strategic value. A player who could move closer to the hole off the tee could use a shorter club for the next shot. Shorter approaches generally meant smaller misses. Even when the drive found the rough, raw proximity could compensate for lost accuracy. The traditional penalty model was becoming less reliable, so Bryson began rebuilding his body. The process was aggressive: intense resistance training, large meals, protein shakes throughout the day, calories treated as fuel for a machine under construction. During late 2019 and the early months of 2020, he gained close to 50 pounds. The goal was not appearance. The added mass was designed to support higher clubhead speed without losing control. Then professional golf stopped. The pandemic closed tournaments and removed the normal competitive schedule. For most players, the shutdown was an interruption. For Bryson, it became a laboratory. When competition returned, the result was impossible to ignore. He was carrying hazards that had once determined strategy. He was hitting driver on holes where other players saw only danger. Broadcast cameras struggled to frame landing areas that had rarely mattered before. His average drive reached 322.1 yards. The tour average was 296.4. That difference was not merely cosmetic. 25 additional yards could turn a long iron into a short iron into a wedge, a defended hole into a different hole entirely. The number changed the map. In July 2020, Bryson won the Rocket Mortgage Classic. The victory appeared to validate the project, but Detroit was built for scoring. Critics could still argue that distance was being exaggerated by a receptive course and ideal conditions. Winged foot was supposed to provide the correction. The US Open had been designed around punishment. Narrow, fairways, heavy rough, firm greens. A player who missed repeatedly was expected to disappear. Bryson missed repeatedly. He hit only 23 of 56 fairways during the week. 41%. Under the old logic, that number should have eliminated him. Instead, he won by 6 shots. He was the only player to finish under par. The final round scoring average was nearly 75. Bryson shot 67. That was the moment the conversation moved beyond one golfer. Winged foot had been prepared to defend itself against power. The rough was thick enough to make accuracy seem mandatory. But Bryson's misses often finished so far down the hole that he could attack with shorter clubs. His strength allowed him to move the ball from lies that would have created larger problems for other players. The course had not failed. Its assumptions had. Golf had spent decades making championship venues longer and more severe. Each expansion was supposed to preserve the value of strategy. But longer courses also created more space for the longest players to separate themselves. The attempted solution was feeding the advantage. Not everyone accepted that interpretation. Bryson's defenders had a strong argument. Distance alone did not win the US Open. He controlled his iron shots. He handled the greens. He managed pressure better than the field. Plenty of powerful players competed at winged foot. Only one finished 6 under par. His fairway percentage also required context. Not every missed fairway created the same penalty. Some misses were calculated. Some provided a better angle. Others were made less damaging by his strength and wedge control. Reducing the victory to brute force ignored the complete performance. There was another point. Every shot Bryson played was legal. His training was legal. His clubs conformed to the rules. His strategy used information available to anyone prepared to study it. Punishing a player for optimizing the system would have been difficult to defend. The real pressure belonged somewhere else. If one golfer could change the geometry of elite golf without violating a rule, perhaps the rules had not kept pace with the game they governed. The industry moved quickly to turn the experiment into entertainment. Bryson began discussing longer drivers and higher speeds. Launch monitor numbers became content. Attempts at 400-yard drives generated more attention than conservative tournament strategy ever could. At the 2020 Masters, he said he viewed Augusta National as a par 67 because he could reach every par 5 in 2 shots. The statement became a symbol of the new confidence. Augusta answered differently. Bryson finished tied for 34th. Distance had not removed uncertainty. The course still demanded recovery, touch, positioning, and patience. His own comment followed him for years, and he later acknowledged that he had made a mistake in how he described the challenge. The story should have become more balanced there. Power mattered. Power was not everything. But the pursuit had already escaped the laboratory. At Bay Hill in 2021, Bryson attacked the 6th hole by driving across the lake. The shot traveled approximately 377 yards. The crowd reacted before the ball landed. It was no longer watching ordinary course management. It was waiting for an event. Bryson won the tournament by 1 stroke. The image traveled across golf. A player standing on a tee, ignoring the intended route and choosing a line that appeared unavailable to everyone else. Other elite players noticed. Rory McIlroy had already been one of the longest hitters in professional golf. But after seeing Bryson's transformation, Rory began chasing additional speed. Months later, after missing the cut at the Players' Championship, McIlroy acknowledged that the pursuit had contributed to problems in his swing. The experiment was no longer affecting one body. It was influencing the decisions of the players trying to defeat him. That is how a pattern forms. One player finds an advantage. Competitors copy the method. Coaches adapt. Manufacturers respond. Courses add distance. The new baseline becomes normal, and the next player begins from there. Golf's governing bodies had already started studying distance in 2018. Their concern did not begin with Bryson. That distinction matters. He did not create the entire problem. He accelerated the demonstration. By 2021, the USGA and the R&A were considering a model local rule, allowing tournaments to limit non-putter club length to 46 inches. Bryson had been experimenting with a 48-inch driver, the maximum previously allowed. The new option took effect in 2022. It was a narrow response. One piece of equipment, one visible edge, but the engine behind distance remained untouched. Stronger athletes, advanced biomechanics, launch monitors, optimized golf balls, forgiving driver heads, and years of increasingly precise data. There was also a cost that did not appear on the launch monitor. By late 2022, Bryson had abandoned the extreme bulking program. He said he had eaten improperly for roughly a year and a half. His digestive system was struggling. Testing indicated significant inflammation. He hired a nutritionist, changed his diet, and lost about 20 pounds in a month. The body that had appeared to prove the experiment was now providing a different set of data. The weight had helped create speed. The method had not been sustainable for him. That does not establish that speed training is inherently dangerous. There's no public evidence that every player pursuing distance will experience the same problems. Bryson's own account was narrower. His diet had been wrong. For his system, the distinction matters, but so does the timeline. The industry celebrated the external result before the internal cost was understood. Bryson became leaner. The speed did not disappear. His technique improved. His equipment evolved. The spectacle remained. In 2024, the same player who had overpowered winged foot returned to win at Pinehurst with a different public image and a more complete performance. The decisive shot was not a drive. It was a 54-yard bunker recovery under maximum pressure. That moment strengthened the argument made by his supporters. Bryson was never only power. He could create, he could recover, he could perform when the tournament had been reduced to a single swing. The crowd saw a champion. The business of golf saw something else as well. Attention. Bryson had built a direct relationship with millions of viewers through online videos and golf challenges. He no longer needed a traditional broadcast to explain him. His speed, curiosity, and unpredictable experiments worked perfectly on digital platforms. A long drive could become a thumbnail. A launch number could become a storyline. A player could become his own media company. Distance was no longer just a competitive advantage. It was an audience product. An audience was leverage. Equipment companies sold speed. Broadcasters sold spectacle. Courses sold encounters with impossible architecture. Players sold access to the process. Almost every major participant benefited from the image of the ball traveling farther. That made regulation more complicated. The people discussing how to control distance were operating inside an industry that had learned how to monetize it. In December 2023, the USGA and the R&A announced revised golf ball testing conditions. The original plan was to introduce the change for elite competition in 2028 and for recreational golf in 2030. Under the proposed standard, the longest hitters were expected to lose as much as 13 to 15 yards. Average elite male professionals were projected to lose roughly 9 to 11. For the first time, the authorities had moved toward changing the ball for the entire game. Manufacturers objected. Some players objected. Critics warned about cost, confusion, and punishing ordinary golfers for an elite-level issue. Supporters argued that weighting would only make older courses less relevant and push the sport toward a narrower test of power. Then, in June 2026, the structure changed again. The USGA, the R&A, the PGA Tour, and the DP World Tour issued a joint statement. There would be no change to the overall distance standard until January 2030. The original phased timeline was gone. The organizations also acknowledged that distance continued to increase at the elite level, yet the tours expressed concern that the proposed ball testing approach might not produce the desired result. Alternative measures would be studied. The industry had spent years documenting the problem. It still had not settled on the solution. That delay says more than any single drive. Golf knows the trend is real. The governing bodies have said it repeatedly. Players understand the advantage. Manufacturers understand the market. Course architects understand the consequences. But every serious response transfers value. A shorter ball affects equipment companies. A local rule affects tournaments and players differently. Longueur course demand land, water, and maintenance. Doing nothing protects the present while increasing pressure on the future. Bryson DeChambeau remains at the center of the image because he made the invisible calculation visible. 40 pounds, 322.1 yards, 23 fairways, a six-shot victory. None of those numbers proves that he damaged golf. Together, they prove that the old assumptions could be defeated, and that may be the part Tiger Woods understood before everyone else. The warning was never that one player would become too powerful. The warning was that the system would celebrate the distance, sell the distance, and copy the distance before deciding whether it still knew how to control it. Bryson did not break the game. He showed the game what its own incentives had built. And if golf is still searching for an answer years later, perhaps the most important number was never 322. Perhaps it was 2030. The year the industry promised it might finally decide.